Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another thing where I talk about things. Today, we're going to talk about girlfriends. I got an email from somebody who recently broke up with his lady friend, and he said he was feeling bad. It's been a little while since I got that email, so he's probably had some time to recuperate. And today, we're doing this with the dog in the room. She's going to cry and beg at some point, so that'll be a joy. Anyway, yes, talking about past girlfriends, it's something I haven't really gone into, like, in-depth detail about, like, oh, this is all my past romantic history. Because whenever you do that sort of thing, you always get it from the perspective of one person. And, usually you'll find that, like, if the guy's telling the story, the woman would have liked to chime in and point out that the man was the devil and deserved everything that went wrong. So, you get these two different perspectives, and you can only really speculate on what was going through the other person's head or why they did what they did. And I know that most of my exes would say that the reason we broke up was because of something that I was doing, and that, it was good that we split up because I was terrible for him anyway. And, that's just sometimes the way that it is. Although, over time you forget the memories sometimes of why you split up, and you say to yourself, like, well, I don't know, maybe it wasn't so bad, like, I don't know, maybe this dog is in my chair. Please get down, thank you. She digs up my chair when she gets bored. She does a lot of things. She destroys stuff when she gets bored, fusses, destroys. She's a little dachshund, a little miniature dachshund. Really likes to dig, really likes to chase. Anyway, though, yes, so little dog aside, I don't know. Maybe I'll. It's fine. It's fine. You guys don't need to see little dog. Anyway, little dog aside. So yes, I suppose the way to approach this is just to kind of talk about like dating over the course of my general life, which I don't know. I can say like my experience with dating in high school and whatnot has got me to where like some parents I recall wouldn't let their kids date until they were at least 18. And this is because that's like the legal age that you're an adult, and theoretically your parents have no influence over what you're doing any longer. So I just knew kids that their parents made that rule. They said you can't date until you're 18. And when I was young, I always felt that was rather restrictive and rather oppressive. But now that I'm older and I've gone through dating in high school and everything like that, I'm not sure whether that's really vindicated or not. I mean, it kind of depends on how things go with your kid and who they date and what happens and what lessons they learn. But it can be risky. Like, it's, romance is one of those things. Two people have to trust each other a lot, and teenagers are just generally, by nature, not very trustworthy. So, what can I say? Like, before you start dating someone, like, I remember being young, you really romanticize the idea of romance. You say to yourself, like, oh, this is gonna be, like, the most amazing thing. Like, all these positive things are gonna happen. There's gonna be flowers, and love, and like sock puppets that we're both we're gonna make sock puppets. Gonna be a mutual sock puppet thing. It depends on what kind of books you read. Sometimes you develop different fantasies. But in any case, though, once you actually start dating is when you start to really grapple. Like for a little while, it's shiny and new and exciting, and you're both kind of trying to live out those fantasies that you have. But over time, you begin to realize that the other person is like a person, and people are smelly apes at their most fundamental core. So the only thing that you can do is just like deal with the fact that they are smelly apes. And I recall that when I was young, like my first girlfriend-ish type of person was like middle school, I think was when it was. And it started off with just this girl that I rode on the bus with. I had a couple of classes with her. And I remember I used to joke with her during math class. I think it was. I don't know, I had a math class with her. And so she rode home on the bus with me. And we got a little flirty. And it didn't really develop into much of anything. It just became kind of like, we were young and didn't really understand the rules of romantic dating or anything like that. So we just became like a friends with benefits sort of deal, but in a childlike kind of way. So it wasn't really like, there weren't really any benefits. It was just sort of like friends, but with kissing and hand-holding. And I recall she also had a friend who was kind of like finding herself and experimenting with things, and it was a little bit funny because she was sort of experimenting with girls, and so, like, I remember her friend was really interested in the girl I was seeing, her love life, and like she kind of wanted to be like a part of it and like involved in it, and so one day, like under the friend's encouragement, she's like, "Oh, let's all go play strip poker," and so we went to someone's house, like their parents weren't home at the time, and I remember, like, that was like my first ever time like seeing a girl like close to the nude. It didn't actually wind up being like full strip poker. It was like, you know, to everyone's underwear. And then the girl who initiated it wound up being like excluded because it was like, yeah, I don't know, like it's a little weird. Like it was kind of funny. Like we went to the point of like going there, and then but she was like so eager and enthusiastic it didn't really matter. She's like, oh, okay, I'll just be in the other room, you guys tell me the juicy details later. And it was kind of like, yeah, I don't know, we played strip poker for a while, and then it proved to be a little bit more like, it was less exciting than we thought it would be. Like I don't know, it was weird, like those awkward teenage years of like getting to know the opposite gender, just you know, when you're like 14 years old or whatever. I don't know. There's not really a lot of things that you can say about that sort of thing that are really that amazing. I mean, it was a big deal to me at the time, but looking back on it, I can't think of very much that I can say other than just, you know, it went, and then eventually she broke up with me. I think because I got a cut on my lip, and she mistook it for herpes. So she was like, you know, again, like 14-year-olds. So she was just like, oh, we have to break up because I don't want to get sick or whatever. And then this was like, she didn't actually say sick. It was kind of like I got the impression that maybe she just didn't like the cut, but I got the impression she, I don't know. It was weird. 14 years old. So yes, it wasn't like a couple of years later that I actually wound up dating someone, like actually dating them throughout high school. And this person I dated for, I don't know, like, I can't recall, like 4 months or something like that. Some other teenage girl. But this was the one who really kind of just totally shattered my illusions about what women can be or what women are. The idea that you can trust people. Because, or the idea that you unconditionally trust them anyway. Because what she did, she kind of had a lot of emotional issues. She came from a slightly troubled home. I mean, like, she had a single mom, and her mom was kind of a pothead, and you know, I don't know, she wasn't like, she wasn't in the best life situation. It wasn't terrible, like I can't really say like, oh, you know, everything was going downhill. There was in a like okay neighborhood and everything like that. But I don't know, she kind of had this thing where she was like, she had been dating some guy before, and then she started dating me to sort of like make him jealous. And so she used to talk to me about her ex-boyfriend a lot. And it was really frustrating. We were only together for like a couple of months. And then at one point we broke up because it just got to be like frustrating. We really didn't have anything in common. And so I broke up with this girl, and then like in the past I might have been hesitant to say this because like around 2015 we were getting all into like, oh, rape culture, where like if a man gets accused of rape, he is unconditionally guilty no matter what. But she got mad, and over AIM, the instant messenger, AOL instant messenger, for those of you who aren't familiar with this, she threatened to tell everybody that I had raped her. And this was a big deal, and so like I went and I was a little too embarrassed to tell my parents about it, but I did contact an adult the very next day, and I said, this girl is threatening to tell everyone that I raped her. And so the adult they took it pretty seriously, and they were like, well, did you? And I was like, no. And here's the chat logs to show it. And this was the advantage of the fact that she did this over the internet, was that there was a whole series of chat logs of like her basically being like, I'm so angry at you, I'm gonna tell everyone this, and it was kind of like the back and forth, and you know, it was like here's clear written evidence. So I saved the chat logs, gave them to this adult for them to hang on to should this person actually try to accuse me of. And so then I spoke to this person, like they were like, well, you need to speak to this girl, you need to let her know that you know, you've contacted an adult, and you know, everything, you should probably just both drop this. So I got in touch with her again, and I was like, hey, like I told someone about this whole like threatening to rape, they're threatening to tell everyone that I raped you thing. And she was just livid. She was like, you went to an adult, like you told someone older than us that I threatened that. Like, I wasn't going to get adults involved. Like, I don't know, she was just weird. It was like, she's like, I wasn't going to get adults involved. Like, I wasn't going to tell the police. Like, I was just going to tell the other kids at school, you know, to ruin your reputation so you wouldn't be able to date again. Like, you know, like what's wrong with you, Greg? Like, I don't know, she got upset. She's like, don't tell anyone. She's like, don't tell anyone that I threatened you like that. Jesus. Like, I'll drop it if you drop it. Like, I don't want to have to, like, you know, get nailed for, like, making a false accusation of a crime or something like that. And I was like, okay. All right, yeah, if you'll drop it, I'll drop it. So, yeah, save those chat logs. That wound up being blown over. But that whole thing, like, man, that was a little bit traumatizing. Like, I'm able to sort of gloss it over now, but I remember, man, like, back then, like you put a lot of that was her being my first girlfriend. Like I remember, like I got those great big doughy eyes, you know, around her for a while because you just like it's like your first girlfriend. It's like, oh wow, this person's into me, and like you know, you don't really know as a kid, you don't understand the feelings that you have. You're not able to separate them from like reality. You kind of attach a lot of fantasy to them, and you say like, this is gonna be great, this person's gonna be great, you know, all this stuff, and you know, you find it's possible that you can be attracted to someone who's maybe not so great, you know. Their physical features may be not all there is to them, and when you get to know them, it turns out they're kind of crappy. And so I don't know, she kind of went on to be sort of crappy without me. Like I kept track of her for a little while, and like I say, when I started dating her, she was always talking about her ex. And it turns out that when she moved on and started dating other guys, she was doing the same thing to them. She was just talking about me all the time. It made them angry. So I don't know, weird. But yes, like I say, slightly traumatizing and really kind of, I don't know, it knocks the romanticism out of you a little bit to have somebody do something like that to you. And again, like, when feminism started to come out really strong and they started to get into, like, rape culture, and they were just like, men need to be imprisoned, like, the minute a woman accuses them. Like, I could easily just think back to that time and say to myself, like, no, that's not how it should go. There should be some kind of fair trial, you know, guilty until proven innocent. Because otherwise, people like that, women like that who are intentionally malicious, just have too much power. It's scary. It's a scary kind of thing. But anyway, though, yes, that was probably like this is probably the scariest thing that I ever had happen in a relationship. I mean, like, I had some things that I did, like, you know, I dated some girls for a little while, some short-lived things. The dog looks like she wants out here. I'm gonna let her out. She's gonna want back in as soon as I close the door, though, when she realizes that she's excused from my life here. But, yes, anyway. Yeah, I dated some girls, I did some things, I saw some people, but nothing really too notable. It wasn't until, like, my senior year that I met this girl who I wound up dating for a very long time. I dated through almost all of college. And this is a slightly better experience. This is when I started to get into, like, actually adult relationships. And adult relationships are harder. Like, kids are dramatic, and kids cause trouble for each other, and kids are just inherently unreliable. Which is why I say, like, I'm not sure. Like, those parents who prevent their kids from dating until they're older, they might be justified. I mean, kids are awful. But also, too, I suppose it's important for kids to learn that other people can be awful, and not to overly romanticize your relationships. Because one thing that I've learned is that, like, I've dated some girls who, like, never dated before, and this girl happened to be one of them. And they do have that early romanticism, and it lasts for kind of a while, especially if you continue to be sweet on that person, or sweet to that person for a long time. Like, if you are not horrible, then that sort of, you know, big wide-eyed, like, every time they look at you, like, their pupils dilate to, like, double their size. Like, that'll stick around for quite a while, for a good, I don't know, maybe even, like, a couple of months. Like, I just remember she had that. Like, we were dating, I was her first boyfriend, and she had that for, like, the longest time. And I don't know when she lost it. I think it was about when she realized that she couldn't unconditionally leverage me to do anything. Like, if she was trying to get me to do stuff that was disadvantageous to me, I was more resistant. And I think that bugged her, and that's about when she stopped having the doe eyes. It's because it's kind of like you realize, like, oh, I mean, like, oh, right, they're human. They're human. They have flaws and drawbacks and quirks and needs and all these other things. Like, it's kind of, there's a certain amount of responsibility here and all that. But anyway, though, so I started dating this girl, like, senior year in high school. And we went to the prom together and everything like that. And it was a lot of fun. She wore, like, this dress. It was really sparkly. And so you could tell, like, everywhere that she'd been, like, she came home with me for a while and we watched a movie at my parents' house. And everywhere she sat, everywhere she had been, she left a trail of sparkles because the dress was all sparkly. So that was fun. She was cute. Her family was really nice. Very upstanding people. They were immigrants from... well, I don't want to get too much into personal details with this other person. But in any case, though, they were really great family. I used to hang out with their brother a lot. We played the Armored Core games. And so, like, I would borrow the game. And I would build robots, and I would show up, and I would play the game with her brother. And so I developed a good reputation with their brother. They had a golden retriever, really sweet dog, very, very well trained. And what they used to do, and I really liked this, was that they trained it to where they could actually put food in her mouth. And then, like, as long as her dad was acting like the dog was overreacting. Like he would do this thing. He'd be like, "You almost bite me! You almost bite me!" And like his hands would be like nowhere near the dog's mouth. She would just be sitting there with the treat in her mouth. Then be like, "You almost bite me! Oh my gosh, you almost bite me!" And then as soon as he says okay, she would eat the treat. But just like there's just like this, like the dog was just like trying so hard. She was so well trained. She would just sit there with like the treat on her tongue, like in her mouth. Nobody touching her, nobody stopping her, and she would wait for the response. And so, yeah, very well behaved dog, very well trained, really sweet. She used to get really excited whenever I showed up. So I dated this girl for like 4 years, and we went to college together. We got like apartments together and everything like this, and kind of handled that end. But the trouble with young relationships is, like, you often hear that people, when they start dating in high school, the relationships don't generally last for very long. And the reason for that, you find, is because people kind of grow apart. When they get into their 20s and you start to get into, like, your actual serious life direction, you realize that you're sort of growing apart. And what she wanted to do is, she wanted to be a doctor. Like, her family was very... like everyone's sick, like everyone gets sick, like doctors will always have jobs, you'll never be without job security. And medicine is like if you're exploitative and terrible, medicine is a great place to be right now, because it's so easy to exploit and essentially extort people for money for their health. Her family was very ethical. They weren't into this kind of thing. In fact, her dad had like this fantastic reputation. I remember shadowing at the hospital once when I was doing my pharmacy stuff. And just everyone was like, "Oh, Dr. So-and-so? Like, Dr. So-and-so? Like, oh man, he's like one of the most upstanding doctors we have on staff. Like, everybody loves him. His bedside manner is fantastic." So he wasn't encouraging his daughter to get into medicine for the unethical reasons. He just thought that it was a very stable job. And he was great with people. He worked well with people. He was very patient. He was very calm. He talked people through things and everything like that. But the trouble was that his daughter was not as much of a people person. Like, she really didn't like people. She was kind of a loner. And that was one thing that she and I sort of had in common. I wouldn't say that I'm a loner. Like, I enjoy being around people. I enjoy talking to people. Like, when I go to conventions and I meet fans, like, I like to meet fans. I like hanging out and talking to people. I like going to the parties. I remember PBN, he went to one of the parties with me once, and he was like, I know, Greg has this, like, really strong party sense. Like, I was just walking him around, and every time something interesting was going on, like, Greg was there just like 5 minutes beforehand, because I was like talking to everybody. Like, I was just like, "Oh, what's going on? Hey, what's going on?" And so like people would tell me like, "Oh, this is about to happen." I'd be like, "Come on, guys, let's all go over here." And you could say there was a slight reverse on that, because we were at that one party and there was like, "Oh, the stripper's coming," and I was like, "All right, guys, let's go to the Klingons," because I didn't really want to watch the stripper. That gets a little wild, and the place was already packed and like hot as heck anyway. So Anyway though. I enjoy people, but I am the type of guy who tends to form like, a very close bond to like one person, and I'm usually happy with that. Like, I have other friends, but usually I have like one best friend, and through most of my adult life, it's usually been a girlfriend. Like, I just got, and this actually makes breakups really hard, but like with Hina, I kind of got focused on her, and she was like my one major source of like social interaction, and then otherwise, I was online and stuff like that, or hung out with my friends on the occasion, over the weekend or whatever. But that's just how it is, like I would form these close relationships. And she would do the same thing. So I was like her closest, and I was always at hand to do stuff with. So she'd get bored and she'd come in and see what I was doing, and we'd get dinner or do something, do whatever, watch TV shows. I used to have to watch like Tyra Banks with her all the time. She really liked Tyra Banks. And I hated Tyra Banks, but she didn't mind that I hated Tyra Banks, so it kind of worked out. Like, she enjoyed the snarky, like, comical things that I would say about Tyra, so she kind of liked me to watch with her. So it worked. Like, I could be cynical and snarky about Tyra, and then she would get to watch Tyra, and everything was fine. So, yes. There was a couple of troubles with the relationship, though, one of which was that we sort of grew apart. We grew in separate directions. I wound up... at first I was going for pharmacy and she was going for medicine, but then I kind of diverted away from pharmacy and got more into engineering. And I think she started to worry a little bit more about finances and things like that. She was a little bit dependent as a person, I think. The trouble was that she tended not to make really good decisions, and there were lots of times like we would get into things like I remember she had lost her credit card information on the internet was one example, where like she downloaded some illegal software, or she downloaded like back then there was still like Kazaa and Napster and stuff like that. Like I think in 2007 or 8 or 9, I can't recall when they finally started passing laws to crack down on Napster. But like that stuff was just collapsing. And so it was kind of going underground is what was going on, but they hadn't actually managed to shut down every single website. So you could still legally get a hold of peer-to-peer file sharing sites like Kazaa and whatnot, and they were free, and you didn't have to sign up or anything like that. But there were also like phishing sites that were like, oh, you can download Kazaa, just give us your credit card. And so like I remember she went to one of those phishing sites and she gave them her credit card. She paid like $50 to be on this peer-to-peer network or something like that. And then she found out that like this thing that she had downloaded was free, and it also didn't come with all the spyware and rootkits that the version of the software that she got had installed on her computer. So she just like, man, it was just like she installed a bunch of viruses onto the computer. She gave them her credit card information. She had to cancel the credit card. And you could say that that was just like one instance of her not being very tech savvy, but it was kind of like there was a bit of a pattern of her kind of doing that sort of thing where she would get roped into buying things or doing things, or like, you know, like we'd be walking around the mall and like some guy would come up and be like, hey, you know what you need? Like this nail buffer thing. And we're doing a special deal, like 2-for-1 sale, only $80 for the boat. Like the first one costs $80 and the second one will be $80 too, but I'm selling them 2-for-1. And you go, it's kind of like, you know, this nail buffing set is not worth $80, but they got, you know, like they're just like, oh, and she's like, oh, what a good deal. You know, I don't know. She was susceptible to that kind of stuff. Like she would go in for marketing, and you know, I don't know. She's older now. She would have to be about 28 by this point in her life. So maybe she's gotten a little bit more wise. But back then, definitely she got tricked by things, and it was tough. And it wasn't only that; it was also with chores. Like I remember she used to get on my case because she would be like, oh, like Craig, like how come the dishes are always dirty? And Claudia gets on me for this. Like, I'll be honest, I'm lazy with dishes. Like, I don't really like to wash dishes. Right now, Claudia and I kind of have a system where I cook dinner and then she washes the dishes because we both hate washing dishes. But moreover, it's also because, like, I have a lower threshold for mess. Like, I've lived with messy people long enough that it doesn't bother me as much as it used to. But back then, you know, like, I tended to want everything to be clean, but I would leave dishes in the sink for a while, because it always felt like there was a lot of dishes, and I was having a hard time keeping up with them. And she would blame me. Like, she'd be like, Greg, how come, like, you're so lazy? How come you don't clean the dishes? Like, you know, the dishes, there's always dishes in the sink. Like, there's always something like, why don't you ever clean? And I would just be like, oh, I don't know. I'm sorry, dear. I'll go out and I'll clean those dishes. I'll go right on it. And so I'd go in and clean the dishes, you know, after getting scolded. And I just would do this, and this was kind of our routine. But after we split up, I noticed that generally the dishes were always clean, and like the apartment was always kind of spotless. And I recall her like inviting me over once after the breakup, and she was like, do you want to like cook dinner for me again, like for old time's sake? And she was kind of trying to reconnect. But I got over there, and like all of her dishes were dirty, and not just like dirty, but like smeared in stuff and needed like a hard scrub to get out. And she's like, yeah. So I mean, like, I know I invited you over, but like if you want to use my pots and pans to clean and you want some plates, we're gonna have to clean all these dishes. And I was just like, oh my god, it was you! It was always you! That's why the dishes were always dirty. That's why there was always stuff laying around on the floor. My apartment is spotless right now. Like, what is all this? Oh my god. So she kind of, I don't know, she just relied on me to clean up after everything and to kind of look after stuff. And after she lost me, it turned out she was a bit of a slob. And, you know, I don't know, she hadn't lived independently before, or not completely independently. She'd lived with me, and I'd always been there kind of like picking up after her. So, yes, she got on my case about stuff like that, and that didn't really bother me too much. I was confused. I always thought that I was making a big mess, and I didn't know how I was making such a big mess, but I took her word for it. And anyway, though, what wound up happening, though, was that the stress of school really got to her. And, like, she was trying to go through college and get her degree in, like, medicine. And, like I said, I'd been with her for 4 years. And as school started to get harder and harder, she started to get more and more stressed out because she was trying to maintain that, like, 4.0 grade average. Plus, you know, anything extra that she could get, because that's just, you know, the mentality that she was on. So she was incredibly driven to do this, and I remember there used to be a little bit of animosity between us because she and I were taking the same classes because we were both pursuing medical stuff originally, and it used to upset her because I had more of a knack for things, and I would tutor her, and this was weird. I mean, like, she would hardcore study, so she would remember, like, the length of Pascal's shoelaces or whatever, and I would not remember that, but I would understand, like, I would grasp the mechanics better. So she would come to me and ask me, like, how things actually worked, and I would sit there and I would explain it to her, and then she would get an A and I would get a B, and so it was kind of funny. Like, I tutored her, got a worse grade, and then she would get the A because she had remembered all the details. She had sat there with the note cards and then just memorized so that she could regurgitate. And of course, the awful thing about that was that then she would forget afterward because it was just like she would cram. She would stay up all night cramming, and then kind of forget most of those details afterward because it was just like she crammed it for the test and all that. And that was another one of those things. Like, I used to just watch that dynamic go on, and it was kind of like she was working harder, so she deserved the A, but at the same time, it was kind of like she was just gaming a system, and it really wasn't healthy either, like watching what she did. But the stress wore on her, like doing that more and more. Like, it got to where as classes got harder and harder, it was more difficult to just cram and then get by just regurgitating, pointless trivia. Because you had to, like, know the material really well. You had to understand it. And, I kind of continued on. And, I don't know, like, grading got weirder, too, as we got into higher level classes. Like, it got to be less straightforward and got to be more objective. It got to be kind of like more essay questions as classes shrank down. And we went to a public university. So the problem that we had was that, like, our first classes were all, like, thousands of students. And so the professors had no way to, like, screw with people because they didn't know who anybody was. Like, you'd go to chemistry and you just sit down, and there were students, like, sitting in the aisles. Like, the room was a fire hazard. They had so many students enrolled that if everybody showed up, they were breaking the law. Basically, this is how bad the American university system has gotten, really. I mean, like, tuition is just exorbitant, and then they provide virtually nothing of value for the amount that you pay. It's just disastrous. It's terrible. So yes, so early on it wasn't so bad though, because like the professors couldn't pay attention and they therefore couldn't jerk you around. But as you got to like smaller classes, they would start to do these essays, and they would do things like I had a thermodynamics professor. This is the one that ruined me on my track was. He just made this essay. He made this test that was like, memorize these figures, and then here's the math problems to test your competency. And like the math problems were unsolvable. He had like 2 big math problems, and like one of them required like Newton's method, but he forbade the use of calculators. So you had to sit there and like by hand like use up all of your testing time to solve the problem like by iteration, and if you didn't solve it you didn't get full credit. And like the other one was also really challenging. He was just like wasting everyone's time with the math questions, and everyone's score was based on the like, did you remember the minutia? And I never did that, so I failed that exam. I did very poorly on it, and then other people who like remembered the minutia, they were like, yeah, I don't know, I got an F, but so did everybody else. How did you do? It was like, well, I got an F too, but I didn't like remember this exact like this exact term so well, so I didn't like I don't know, it was like a short test, and then the stuff that I usually scored well on was just made to be impossible. So I don't know, like professors later on, they just start jerking you around. They have this kind of like more weird system, and I'm not sure what they're doing because it feels like they're still trying to weed people out because there's still too many students. Like 40 students is too many for a professor to really individually mentor. But it's enough for him to like individually screw with you. I don't know. It's just like the educational system. Yeah. Anyway. So that was stressful. It had her under a lot of stress. And the thing was that I was under the impression that she didn't really want to go into medicine. I mean, really and truly, if you looked at what medicine was about, like it was about interacting with people and working with people. And she kept saying that like, once I get accepted into medical school, the stress is going to decline. Because she assumed that, like, oh yeah, there's, like, this big hump of, like, I have to climb over this, and then once you get accepted, they're just teaching you. Like, they're not trying to fail you, they're just trying to teach you. And I talked to other people, and they were like, oh, no, that's wishful thinking. Like, medical school will continue to just ride you into the dirt. They're trying to get rid of you. I mean, you're paying them thousands of dollars, but you know, this is just the system at work. They're just trying to get rid of you. Like, if you have to retake a class, like, that's just more money for them. There is no incentive for them to help you, like, to help you be educated. They just put you to the grindstone. And if you don't get through, then they tell you, well, tough titties, you know. This is the system. Like, if you couldn't make it, you're not cut out to make it. So she believed that she was going to be under less stress once she got into medical school, and everyone was always telling me that that was not the case. And so what wound up happening is, I mean, like, she would come to me to vent, and I remember trying to divert her away from medical schools. I would say, like, well, you know, maybe you're not really cut out for medicine. And I think this was the wrong approach. Like, after the breakup with her, I spent a lot of time thinking about what had gone on, and what did I do, and what could I have done better. And it occurred to me that probably telling her she wasn't going to make it wasn't actually what she was looking for. She was looking for unconditional support from her partner. And instead, I was providing criticism and telling her she probably wasn't going to make it. And I was trying to get her to, like, go into different careers. I was like, well, this is a good career, and that's a good career. Like, these are some ways that you could go, and I think you'd be happy in this. And she wasn't looking for a guidance counselor. She, like I said, she was looking for unconditional emotional support. So me telling her to bail on medical school was just adding to the stress. And it got to be like, you know, she started to get on my case for a lot of things, a lot of very difficult things. And the sex life suffered too, because, I mean, we're both under a lot of stress, and so you want to sleep together less often. And so she used to approach me, and she'd be like, oh, let's come to bed with me. And I would say, no, I'm really not feeling it tonight. And she would just get mad at me, and she would fight with me, and she would scold me. It would be one of those things. It was like, how dare you not react to my needs, and da-da-da-da-da. And this developed a problem where she would consistently, every time she came in to proposition me, I would get nervous. Because if I couldn't perform, I was going to be in trouble. And so she would come in and she would just be like, let's go to bed. And I'd be like, no, I'm really worried. I don't know, I'm not feeling it. And then I would get scolded again. I would get yelled at. So, yeah, like, yelling at your partner when they don't want to sleep with you, it's not a good way to get them in the right mood. Because pretty soon, like I say, anytime she was acting sexy, I associated that with, like, oh boy, here comes the yelling match. So that wasn't sexy. I mean, that was the problem, is that, like, being stressed out and pressured, like, that's not a sexy feeling. And so you can't stress your partner into feeling sexy. Like, it just doesn't work like that. So we got in this kind of loop, and you know, things started to just come unraveled. And eventually we split up. Like, you know, it makes logical sense that we did. It just kind of follows that that's what was going to happen. School's a stressful time. College is a difficult time. People grow up. They grow apart. They kind of go their own ways. And also, it's just difficult to devote the right amount of time to seeing each other. I knew people who refused to date through college, in fact, for exactly that reason, because they knew that it was just going to be really distracting, and they weren't going to be able to give the relationship the time that it deserved. So, yeah, I mean, like, that was my first, like, really big, really long relationship that was really serious, and, like I say, I thought a lot about it, I dwelled on it a lot, and I thought about things that I did wrong, afterward, and I resolved, to correct some of the mistakes that I had made. I mean, like, there were things that she did that I wish she hadn't done, but, you know, I can't control another person. There were things that I did that I shouldn't have done, that were probably foolish in hindsight, and I shouldn't have done it. But, yeah, that's life for you. You know, you learn, you move on. And then I dated a little bit, you know, kind of went out with a couple of girls. Nothing really came of it too much. I dated some girl that I had some crush on through, like, middle of school and high school. And that was a little bit funny, because, like, you know, I got to make out with her for the first time. And it was like, man, after all those years of, like, chasing this girl when I was younger, as adults, we really didn't have that much electricity between us. I mean, like, she's okay, not to say that she wasn't attractive, but just it was sort of like, all right, here we are, finally made it, and yeah, there it is, did it, conquered that, you know, climbed that mountain, bam, and so that didn't, like, become anything. But then I started talking to Kenza, who some of you are, maybe quite a few of you are familiar with, because she appeared on Personal Time, did voice for us for the Joker Mort and things like that. And Kenza was a good couple of years younger than me. And this is an interesting thing. Like, right now, Claudia is like She's a bit younger than me as well, but I just have kind of a young looking face. So as I got older, like women my own age kind of always assumed I was a kid, and they don't really like pay me all that much attention. But younger girls look up and they see like, oh, this guy's about my age, so they go for it. And I don't know. This is better as I get like into my late 20s and things like that, because hey, I get a young girlfriend because I look young. But back then, like when I was in my 20s, it was a real detriment, like looking so young. I couldn't, like, it was so hard to meet women because I look like a kid. I look like a child. And so, yeah. But anyway, though, yes, Kenza was a few years younger than me. And when I first started talking to her, I actually assumed that she was much older than she was. She acted with a fair amount of maturity, and like I didn't I bring up her age or anything like that. I just talked to her and we became friends. And I started talking to her a lot. Just turns out we had a lot in common. We started watching a lot of shows together, playing a lot of games online, and eventually we agreed I would go out and I would meet her. And at first we were gonna meet in Paris, but then it became Berlin, and I can't remember why it became Berlin. But part of the deal was that she was hiding the relationship from her parents because her parents were somewhat traditional. They were immigrants from Morocco. Still fairly religious down there, and so they had opinions about her dating, and they weren't too enthused about the long distance thing either once she did complain about it. So But anyway though, so for a little while, Kenza was she was the romantic type, and so I believe that she also kind of idolized the relationship thing for a while. But what was unfortunate was I found that, although I kind of moved on in my life and I had gotten out of college eventually, I actually went back to college for a little while and then tried to juggle 3 jobs while going to school and found that was just stupid and impossible. School is hard. School doesn't care about your life. This was tough. This is one of those things, I dropped out for a while and then tried to go back to school. And I tried to continue my life as it had been. I'd gotten used to working and earning money and paying for my own rent and my own car insurance and everything else like that. And I'd been working in land survey for a while. And I got back into school and just everything is so much less pragmatic. They just really waste your time. They just don't care. And it was really it was just so frustrating because I could sit there and I could see all right, so they've assigned me 50 problems. But I've got this figured out by problem 20. I've got it nailed down. And doing the rest of these problems is kind of just it's not for mastery anymore, it's for points. And again, you just get kind of back into this, it's a system, they're not testing they're not teaching you, they're also testing how willing you are to go through the stress of the system and just deal with their crap, and it was kind of I gotta be at work in an hour. I didn't quit my jobs. So yes, so man, I became a really hard drinker around that time. I started drinking a lot because I was just under stress all the time. And it wasn't I was getting completely messed up every single night, but it was just I was buying vodka, just straight vodka, and I would just drink out of the bottle and do my homework. I would come home from work, pull out the vodka, and then just do my homework until I was too tired to continue and then go to bed. So, yeah, I mean, that kind of became my thing for a while, and then eventually I was just I can't really do this. I don't know how I'm supposed to get through this, this way. This is, school is so expensive, and it just doesn't allow you to, this is the worst part about it, is that school makes itself so inordinately expensive, but it also doesn't give you time to, work to pay for those bills. I don't know. I don't understand why the system, I don't know what they think they're going to do. Prices continue to go up. I just don't know what does American university think is going to happen? Eventually they're just going to start pricing people out of college, and they're not going to be able, there's going to be a bubble on them. I feel it. Cause you can't just keep raising prices infinitely and just be yeah, everyone will just keep paying these loans. Eventually people will stop going to college because they won't be able to afford it. And then whatever they're doing to necessitate all these stupid things they keep building, all these stadiums and everything else like that, they're not going to be able to afford them, and they're going to start to go downhill because because enrollment's going to drop off and everything's just going to fall out. This is what happens when you you just create an unsustainable bubble of financial burden on the people who use your system. And we get into this free market thing, oh, it's the free market, that's how it's supposed to work. And it's unfortunate that we have to rely on the free market to kill something as important as education to make it function. But yeah, eventually I feel like the American education system is gonna pop. But anyway, though, I have very negative feelings about the American education. I don't know if you've noticed, if anyone has ever like really noticed, but yeah, I don't feel strongly about it. So anyway, though, so Kenza, yes, I dated her internationally, and international dating, like in hindsight, I don't really recommend it. Not because, you know, people overseas aren't great, but because it's super expensive, and I probably spent like thousands and thousands of dollars on doing all this stuff. And at the time, it was feasible because like I was working a land survey job and doing this and doing that, and YouTube income was much better. This was well before we had the adpocalypse problems. Like Rainbow Dash Presents was still being promoted, so there was a certain amount of like passive income gain. And the land survey job had like paid vacations, so I could just take time off, and like I would get paid to go be in Germany. So that was great. Like it all kind of worked a little bit better, and I was less buckled down. Like today, like Claudia was saying, like I want to go to Ireland, and I'm kind of like, you know, if I go to Ireland, I won't be getting stuff done, and I won't be able to like, I won't make any money. You know, I'm kind of more, a little more rooted down. You know, just situations have changed. But yeah. It was fun. It was interesting. It was exotic. It was all right. But Kenza kind of started getting the same problem that my previous girlfriend got into, where there was just like the stress of school all the time. Classes started to get harder, and it started to absorb more of her time. And I was sympathetic to this. Like I've been through so much crap with school. That I sat down and I tried to sort of work things out with her. And originally she and I had a plan, like I was going to come out to Denmark. Denmark has a very strict immigration policy, which was a real hurdle. But we were supposed to work together on this kind of thing. But where it started to fall apart is where she started to kind of shunt off the responsibilities onto me. And she was like, listen, like I need you to do all the research on how to get into Denmark. And I told her, no, that's not going to work. Like I don't know Danish law. Like, I don't speak Danish. You need to contact a Danish lawyer and have them help us. Like, and she would say, like, oh, well, okay, like, I'll do that at some point. And then she kind of wouldn't do it. So she would do that, and occasionally, like, anytime it came up, it would just be like, well, you need to do it, Greg. And it was kind of like, I can't. You know, if you're coming to the U.S., then I can certainly look into U.S. lawyers. But I can't, like... I don't know. I mean, like, might be able to make a long-distance call to a Danish lawyer, but this is like, I don't know. I feel like the first thing they're gonna ask is like, who is your potential spouse and why is she not in this office? Because I don't know. It's just like it's kind of an unreasonable burden on the person in the other country. And she didn't want to come to the U.S. Because our medical system and our education system are far below the standards of Denmark, which is understandable. You know, our social programs are nowhere up to snuff compared to that stuff. So yes, it just got to be to where like there was nothing that I could do to advance things. And I remember like I had her send me my schedule, or I had her send me her schedule, and I looked at it, and it was kind of like I plotted out, and in the time of day, like even if she didn't see me at all, she didn't actually have enough time to study based on what people usually recommend, which I think is like 3 hours of study for every credit hour you take. She had so many classes, and she had also chosen to like work part-time. And she didn't need to work because in Denmark they actually pay you to go to college. So you don't need to work. You don't actually have to have a part-time job, but she liked having a part-time job, so she also had to fit in her job between her schedule. So she was taking as many classes as was recommended, I guess, and then was also working. And there were no hours like to study or to do anything, so she had just overbooked herself completely. And so I was kind of sympathetic to this, and I was like, okay, all right, like it looks like you are just slammed. And so I kind of tried to propose like, so like, what if we really cut down our interaction time? And she really didn't like that. She was like, no, I want to talk to you every day. And I said, well, there's not time to talk to me every day. And we got into this kind of whole problem with the long distance thing. There's the time zone difference, where like, you know, we have overlapping waking hours, but she had gotten into this habit of wanting me to call her in the night, or when it was night where she was at, and then she would wake up and talk to me. And it wasn't working because she was always tired. Like I'd call her and she'd be like, oh, I'm going back to bed. And then she would say, well, call me again in an hour. And she would do this to me every hour throughout the night. and it really prevented me from doing anything in the evenings. Like I couldn't like, do anything else because I would have to like call her every hour on the hour, and then just be rejected, and then go back to like doing whatever I was doing and wait for the next hour to roll around, until eventually I just wouldn't call her. I'd give up and go to bed or whatever, and then she'd be mad because it was like, well, where were you? Like, how come you didn't call? And it was like, because you're asleep. This is tough. This is a struggle. So yeah, the stress at that point, like I'd been through this whole rigmarole with my previous girlfriend, and so Kenza would get stressed out, and she'd be like, I'm mad, everything's ruined. And instead of being like, well, maybe you ought to take a break, I was like, well, you're working really hard, and you're doing a lot of work, and you're under a lot of stress, and if you could roll back some responsibilities on your schedule, it would help a lot. But for what you're doing, it's understandable how stressed out you are. And I just tried to be supportive and all that. But I don't know. There came to be a point where it was just like, you can't maintain a relationship by just calling a person and being told to like call them back over and over again. It wasn't really. It just wasn't working, and like say long distance relationships, like it was working as long as she and I were able to spend time together every day. Like I'd call her and I'd say, hey, how you doing? We'd watch a show together, we'd play a game. We had some amount of normal human interaction like every single day. But once that broke down, there really kind of ceased to be a relationship. And I don't know, I grew to resent it, and I kind of brought it up, and like we took a week break, and she promised me like, oh, everything's gonna be better, I'm gonna sort my schedule out. And then nothing changed, and eventually it all just kind of fell apart. And what was really frustrating was that she blamed me at the end of all that. She didn't take any responsibility for it. Like I'd proposed to her because the plan was to get married and emigrate together in Denmark, and she kept the engagement ring. She didn't give it back. She said, well, you split off with me, so this is your forfeiture. Like I get this because you screwed me. And it was just kind of like. I don't personally feel like say I look back on that relationship with the previous girl, and there were a lot of things I felt like I did wrong, and a lot of things I felt like I could have done better. But in the thing with Kenza, after looking back, like I didn't really like see personally a lot of places that I'd gone wrong. Like I didn't feel like there were a lot of times when I'd been too stubborn, or like when I'd been unable to make compromise. Like I'd been wiser, I'd been more experienced, I kind of knew my way around these things, and what I knew just wasn't helping. Like I was making the effort, I was doing my best, but there just had ceased to be any real give and take. And I don't know, like I said, she kept the engagement ring. She was mad, so she just kept the engagement ring. And again, that's life. That's just kind of like it's too bad, but that's how it was. College got another relationship. School dinged me again. Curse you, school. So yes, but though moving on. I'm gonna say I'm with Claudia now, and things are going well. She and I are both kind of more adult. She has a lot more experience. Kenza had never dated before. But Claudia has dated a fair amount. She's a grown adult woman. She's had relationships in the past. She's had long relationships. She's used to guys. She's used to she's used to guys being dumb. She kind of knows their psychology. So there's not like a lot of like learning and whatnot. And so that's been real nice. The fact that I don't have to like explain the male psyche to Claudia has been It's good. I don't have to go through that hurdle. That was always really painful with the previous two girls. It was like I'd do something, and they'd be like, "How come you don't like pretty dress?" I don't know. I can't think of a good example, but there's just like differences between men and women that you kind of have to get used to, and you sort of have to know that they're there. And if you're not totally familiar with them, then they may take you by surprise. And Claudia's been there; she's done that, so she kind of knows her way around things. And can I say it's been good? Also, Claudia lives locally. She's not long distance, which means that we get to hang out and we get to do things and go places. And she's really nerdy. Which is really great. She'll play board games, and her friends like board games, and so we've done like game nights and things like that, and I really enjoy that. Been watching Netflix with her, 30 Rock, things like that. Lots of good times to play with the dog. who hasn't been crying, surprisingly, since I've shut her outside, which is weird. I don't know why. She might be outdoors. No, I shut the door. I don't know. I don't know what the dog's doing. I'm gonna go check on her after this personal time video. But anyway, though, yeah, getting along with the dog, getting along with Claudia, getting along well. And there's still, you know, responsibilities and things like that. Like, we're looking at, like, leasing. We're moving in together officially soon. And I'll be paying half of the rent, and, you know, it's a contract and all this stuff. But we started trying out being together well ahead of time, because it's scary. It's a scary step to move in together and see how things go. But she and I have been together for, like, about a year now. It'll be a year soon, coming up. And, yeah, I don't know. We're looking good. Things have good future prospect, and this is kind of what happens is, you know, you have your ups and downs with your relationships, and sometimes they work, sometimes they fail. But one of the things that helped me split up with Kenza was the realization, like, I for a long time I didn't want to leave her because I felt like she needed support. I mean, like, she was stressed out all the time, and I stuck it out not because I was happy any longer, but for many months I was just sticking it in there because I was concerned that if I left, that her life was going to get even harder than it already was. And I cared for her, and I didn't want to be, like, a reason why her life got even worse. And she did pull that on me, actually, when I broke up with her. She was like, I almost failed my exams because of you, because of the stress. And it was just kind of like, the thing is that if you're with someone, you're with them because they're great. And they don't need you. And that's good. It's good if somebody is independent of you, because that means that they're a strong person, they're a good person, and there's a reason why you're with them. Because they're great, and because they're reliable, and they're dependable, and they have something to add to your life. That's what you're really looking for. So, if you can't leave a person because they need you, and they're dependent, and they don't know what they'd do without you, you know, that person is not as good. That person is in a bad place, and while it's not great to abandon them to their situation, you have to assume that they at least have the ability and the willpower to move on and see someone else and see someone new, because otherwise they're just terrible. They're a sinking ship, and they're going to pull you down. You need to get away from them anyway. So I don't know what's going on with Kenza. She shut me out of everything, so I don't really know. But, you know, whatever the case, if she hasn't really been able to move on in a healthy way, then it's probably for the best that we split up, at least for me. And you know, same kind of goes for previous girlfriends. Like, best of luck to them. I hope that they've moved on and things are going well for them, because that means that they were as good as I thought they were when we first started dating. And, you know, things didn't work out, and that's unfortunate. But as long as they're able to move on and have happy lives afterward, then that means that they were great. And I made a good choice at the time. And what can we say? It was just circumstance. You know, but if they continue to be terrible and everything else like that, well, that's good that I left them. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. So right, so that's the mindset to have, I think, when you get out of relationships, is just you can leave them, because if you can't leave them, then it's worse than if you could leave them. So yeah. Anyway though, that's it. It's not really I don't know why this person, like, they broke up and they wanted to hear my telling of relationships. I think because they thought it would be analytical, and you know, maybe I would have kind of an uplifting perspective on it. And there's kind of a way to, I mean, like, the only thing I can say is you just, you know, you put one foot in front of the other, and you just keep moving. There's nothing really happy about relationships not working out, you know? It's a sad time, and it kind of sucks. And hearing about a relationship fail is sad. Like, everybody's gone through it. It's something we can all be kind of sympathetic to, or a lot of people have gone through it. Or at least, you know, like, you can imagine how it is. So it's, you know, it's not really a lot of uplifting things about, like, relationships failing. But, like I say, it happens. It's a part of life, and you move on, and it gets better. You meet new people, and things go well. And when the two of you are ready, and you're mature, and you're willing to compromise, and if you get along well, and you're both intelligent people, then things will work out. You know, and you'll move forward. And sometimes you're just not in your right place in life, you know, and that happens. Like you're both under a lot of pressure. You know, school's bad. These days, young people are burdened with just stupid amounts of student debt and things like that. So you're getting calls from debt collectors. Life is hard. Life is hard. And those things really do test your relationships quite a lot. The longer you're with someone, the higher the odds are that you're going to go through a tough time with them. They're going to get sick. They're going to be under a lot of stress. And because you love that person, you're going to feel empathetically sad. You're going to feel empathetically stressed. And if it goes on for long enough, that empathy can become exhausting because you're always, like, if they can never pull themselves out of it, then you're always going to be stressed and depressed along with them. So it's tough. Relationships are tough. There are partnership. There are pros. There are cons. You know, it's not all daydreams and puppies and rainbows. But there are good things and there are bad. And what can I say? I feel like living alone is not the worst possible thing that a person could do. But living together definitely has some major advantages, at least in a practical sense, in a pragmatic way, and I mean really in an emotional way. As long as things are going good. If things are going well, then you know it's a net positive. So that's how it is, I suppose. And yeah, if you're going through a breakup right now, then you know buck up. Things will get better, and you'll both move on, hopefully. And if you're in a relationship, then I hope it's going well. And if you guys are fighting from time to time but making it, respect to you. Like, that's tough. Like, say, I know how that is. You can't get away from each other. You sleep in the same bed. Well, one of you can go to the couch, but that's kind of a punishment in a way. So, you know, hey, that's life. That's life. We're all just trying to get through it. And it's not so bad when you think about it. So anyway, that'll be it for today. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I will catch you all next time.